So maybe before we get into the deep weeds here, Joe, I'd love for you to kind of give us some ground rules, some definitions that we can all follow, because oftentimes words like state and nation state are used interchangeably, but they do have very clear and distinct definitions, at least the way that you are writing about them. So I was hoping that maybe you can give us a rundown on what we're gonna mean when we talk about the state, the nation, and the nation state, and or peoples, or any other important definitions that'll help us in this conversation, just that we're all level set.
Sure, and some of these vary conventionally, but I tried to make these definitions very general because in the chapter, I'm not trying to explain one specific nationalism or one specific state or one specific nation state. I'm trying to take what is generalizable about very individually specific processes that eventually produce this same thing. So when I talk about the state, all I'm talking about there is a territorial political subunit. Not kingdoms, not empires, not hereditary dynasties. These are nation states. They have fixed boundaries, and the world is divided up between them, and they're thought to have rights vis-a-vis each other. Nation is easily the most fluid of these topics, although nation state being contingent upon nation, it is also a very unstable construct as well. To be clear, there was an academic whose video Henry sent me a lecture of, and he said this about the term nation, and I think it's perfectly encapsulated. We need it, but it's not analytically rigorous. It is not a very good term. It's hard to measure. So I would just say it's a people bound together by any number of the following combination of things. Could be all of them. A common ideology, customs, ethnicity, invented traditions, a shared enemy, hatred, any number that definitely formed a strong basis for a lot of the post-colonial independence movements, for example. So any of those things, like you can call yourself a nation. It is in some sense subjective. It is a matter of agreement. It is a matter of everyone acting as though it is so, even if we can't narrow something down super specifically. There are some sorts of nationalism that get more well-defined, like there's civic nationalism, which tries to say our nation is going to be defined strictly by ideological terms. Maybe some sort of institutional framework that follows from that. And then, of course, there's ethnic or integral nationalism, which seeks to make a direct connection between a people and some sort of blood connection that into a certain place. But it could be any combination of those things. And then a nation state is just when I say that, that's just the people of a state share the same sense of common national identity. So, Japan, a really good example of one where it's really, I mean, it checks pretty much all the boxes for what could make a nation and a state. So
and then versus Canada, which is two nations in one state, because you have your French speaking population and then
Right.
you have your English speaking population. But there's so many different definitions, and there's been so much academic work and so much written on this subject. And there's one of the definition that honestly that always sticks to me is Benedict Anderson's definition, and we spoke about him before because he has his book Imagine Communities, where basically he says that the nation as a whole is a social construct and it's an imagined community. And you'll figure out where I stole this from if you listen to the rest of this lecture, but that I sent you that you just referenced. But I always say the example of like when you go to a big university and you start saying, like Danny went to Rutgers,
That's right.
Rutgers Nation.
We have
Rutgers
Scarlet
has
Nation.
Scarlet Nation.
Right.
Rutgers has a undergraduate class of 40,000 students.
Yeah, something like that.
Roughly like 40,000 students. Like a school like Michigan State, has 50,000 undergrad students, something crazy like that.
Right.
There's no chance you could even know a school with 5,000 students. Like you wouldn't be able to know every single person and have a personal relationship. So
Right.
that becomes your imagined, like that is your community. It's still a social construct because you don't have personal relationships with all these different people, but you're under the same banner of like Rutgers University, which makes you, you know, Scarlet Nation or
Right. Scarlet
Jets
Knight.
Nation. Like I just ran
Yeah.
into a guy who's like, "Hey man, you're a Jets fan, right?" Because he saw me wearing a Jets at the gym, and you know there was some Jets, football, things on with the roster, and he started talking to me out of nowhere, and we had like a 20-minute conversation. It's just like these small commonalities that unite each other. But it's strange, and it's like a good thing, but also it can be a really scary thing at the same time.